Alright, so picture this. It's one of those nights where the city feels alive with its own heartbeat, and I'm out on the town, soaking in the buzz. I've just left a friend's party, feeling good but not exactly sober, you know? So, like any responsible adult, I flag down a taxi to take me home. The cab pulls up, and I hop in, exchanging nods with the driver. Let's call him Dave. Dave seems like your typical cabbie, friendly enough, but there's something in his eyes, a glint that makes me feel a bit uneasy. But hey, I figure it's just the alcohol playing tricks on me. I give Dave my address and settle back into the seat, watching the city lights blur past. Everything's going fine until we hit this deserted stretch of road. You know the type, dimly lit, with abandoned buildings looming on either side. That's when things start to get weird. Dave starts chatting, asking me about my night, but his tone is off somehow, like he's trying too hard to be friendly. I brush it off, trying to focus on the passing scenery, but then he starts asking more personal questions, probing into my life in a way that makes my skin crawl. I try to deflect, keep the conversation light, but Dave's not having it. He keeps pressing, his voice taking on this edge that sends a chill down my spine. I glance out the window, hoping to distract myself, but that's when I notice it. We're not heading towards my neighborhood anymore. Panic sets in as I realize we're on some back road, miles away from where I need to be. I demand that Dave turn around, but he just laughs, this hollow sound that sends shivers down my spine. He tells me not to worry, that he's taking me on a shortcut, but I can see the glint in his eyes, the one that tells me he's lying through his teeth. I start to protest, to demand that he let me out, but Dave's not having it. He locks the doors, his laughter growing louder and more manic with each passing mile. I'm trapped, a prisoner in this metal cage hurtling through the darkness, with no idea where we're headed or what Dave's planning. Fear grips me as I realize I'm at the mercy of this madman behind the wheel. I rack my brain for a way out, but every option seems to lead to disaster. I consider jumping from the moving car, but the thought of hitting the pavement at this speed makes my stomach churn. Minutes stretch into hours as we barrel down deserted roads, the silence broken only by Dave's occasional bursts of laughter. I try to reason with him, to appeal to his humanity, but there's something in his eyes, something cold and calculating that tells me he's beyond reason. Finally, just when I'm on the verge of giving up hope, we come to a stop in front of an old, dilapidated building. Dave turns to me, his grin stretching impossibly wide, and tells me we've reached our destination. I try to open the door, to escape into the night, but it's locked tight, and no amount of kicking or screaming seems to make a difference. I'm trapped, at the mercy of this madman and whatever horrors await me inside that forsaken building. As Dave drags me from the car, his grip like iron around my arm, I can't help but wonder how I ended up in this nightmare. Was it just bad luck, or is there something more sinister at play? Whatever the answer, one thing's for certain: I'll never look at a taxi the same way again. Just when I think all hope is lost, the distant wail of sirens cuts through the night air. I turn to see flashing lights approaching, and a surge of relief floods through me. Someone must have seen us, must have called for help. The police swarm in, their presence a beacon of safety in the darkness. Dave's grin falters as they haul him away, his protests drowned out by the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. I'm ushered into the back of a squad car, wrapped in a blanket of warmth and security. As we pull away from the scene, I can't help but breathe a sigh of relief. I may have narrowly escaped a brush with death tonight, but one thing's for certain: I'll never take another taxi ride without checking the driver's credentials first. It was a cold, rainy night, and I found myself standing on the sidewalk, desperately trying to flag down a taxi. After a long day at work, I just wanted to get home and curl up in bed with a warm cup of tea. Finally, a yellow cab pulled up to the curb, and I hurriedly climbed inside, grateful for the refuge from the inclement weather. The driver, a middle-aged man with a nondescript appearance, gave me a quick nod before pulling away from the curb. Let's call him Mike. At first, everything seemed normal. The hum of the engine, the soft patter of rain against the windshield. But as we made our way through the city, things took a sinister turn. I noticed that Mike was driving erratically, weaving in and out of traffic with reckless abandon. My heart rate quickened as I realized that something was seriously wrong. I asked Mike to slow down, but he just chuckled and continued to barrel down the rain-slicked streets at breakneck speed. As we sped through the deserted city streets, a sense of unease settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I glanced out the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of familiar landmarks that would reassure me that we were on the right track, but all I saw was darkness and rain-soaked pavement stretching out into the distance. Suddenly, Mike took a sharp turn down a narrow alleyway, the tires squealing in protest as he careened around the corner. My stomach lurched, and I gripped the edge of my seat, fearing for my safety. I demanded that Mike stop the car, but he just ignored me, his eyes fixed on the road ahead with a manic intensity that sent a chill down my spine. As we continued to speed through the deserted streets, I frantically searched for a way out, my heart pounding in my chest. I considered jumping from the moving car, but the thought of hitting the pavement at this speed made my stomach churn. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mike screeched to a halt in front of a rundown building on the outskirts of town. Without a word, he turned to me and gestured for me to get out. I hesitated, my mind racing with fear and uncertainty. But before I could protest, Mike reached over and opened the door, his expression inscrutable in the dim light. I stumbled out of the car, my legs trembling beneath me as I watched Mike speed away into the night, leaving me alone in the darkness. I stood there for a moment, drenched to the bone and shivering uncontrollably, before realizing that I needed to get out of there before something even worse happened. With shaking hands, I fumbled for my phone and called for another ride, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for someone to come and rescue me from this nightmare. And as I huddled beneath the flickering streetlights, I couldn't help but wonder what horrors awaited me in the shadows, and whether I would ever be able to shake the memory of that spine-chilling taxi ride from my mind.